Dana White, the UFC president, had never thought he'd find himself sitting across from Donald Trump in the White House. After all, his role in combat sports seemed worlds apart from the cut-and-thrust world of politics. But here he was, dressed in a suit with an invitation that came straight from Kid Rock himself. The famed musician had long been known for his ties to Trump and the unorthodox nature of his celebrity friendships. But this dinner was unlike anything Dana had ever attended before. March 31st, 2025 was not a typical day for Dana White. Usually, his life revolved around high-profile UFC events, fighter negotiations, and the continuous hustle of managing the world's biggest mixed martial arts organization. But this night, his focus would shift towards something entirely different, a dinner at the White House with Donald Trump, Bill Maher, and a host of other celebrities, including Kid Rock. It was an event that would become a story told by all of them for years to come. Dana had never been one to shy away from speaking his mind, which was part of his appeal in the UFC. He had a reputation for being blunt, straightforward, and unfiltered. But this night would require a little more finesse. It wasn't just a dinner, it was a stage, and everyone there had their role to play. The invitation had come about in a roundabout way. Dana had always been close with Kid Rock, who had performed at several UFC events in the past. They had a mutual respect for one another, built on their shared love for music, American values, and a rebellious streak that set them apart from the establishment. When Kid Rock called Dana up and told him about the dinner, Dana didn't hesitate to accept. "Trump's throwing a big dinner at the White House and I want you there. It's going to be a hell of a night," Kid Rock had told him. Dana couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. A White House dinner hosted by Donald Trump with Kid Rock as the orchestrator? It sounded more like a rock and roll fantasy than reality. But Kid Rock had been serious. He was going all out, arranging a night that would combine politics, celebrity, and entertainment, and everyone involved was going to have a good time. For Dana, it was a chance to break from the world of fighting and step into something a bit more unconventional. He had always found himself drawn to larger-than-life moments, and this was one of them. The night of the dinner, Dana arrived at the White House, a building he had visited a handful of times, but never for something like this. Security was tight, but as soon as he entered, he was greeted with the warmth that only someone with Kid Rock's influence could provide. The dinner was to be a celebration of everything that made America unique: freedom, individuality, and the kind of unfiltered spirit that had propelled both Dana White and Donald Trump into their respective positions. The room was already filled with laughter and conversation, with figures like Bill Maher and other well-known personalities gathered around. Dana felt a little out of his element, but Kid Rock had introduced him to everyone, and soon, he was caught up in the vibe of the evening. The atmosphere was lighthearted, with just enough political edge to keep things interesting. And at the center of it all was Donald Trump, holding court like the host he was, commanding the room with his signature blend of charisma and confidence. But Dana wasn't here just to rub elbows with the powerful. He wanted to get to the heart of what was happening. This was a rare opportunity to see how people like Trump and Maher interacted behind the scenes. It wasn't about the spectacle. For Dana, it was about understanding the dynamics at play. As the evening wore on, the food was served and the conversation shifted. What started as small talk about politics and the latest UFC fights quickly turned into a deeper discussion about the state of the country, entertainment, and the future of sports in America. Bill Maher was in his element, offering his sharp, satirical commentary on everything from the latest election news to the absurdity of Hollywood's obsession with wokeness. But it wasn't all political banter. There were moments when the dinner felt like something out of a movie. The kind of high-stakes gathering where you could almost feel the history being made. The laughter that echoed through the White House that evening was genuine, and despite the intensity of the personalities present, it never felt like a scene from a political thriller. It was more like an impromptu get-together between old friends, each one from a different walk of life. Dana's role in this dinner? He was the outsider, observing and learning, watching how the most powerful figures in American entertainment and politics interacted with each other. He could see the influence Trump had on the room. Even Bill Maher, who often poked fun at Trump on his show, seemed to defer to the former president in the setting. It wasn't that Maher had lost his edge, but in this intimate gathering there was a certain respect for the man who had been the leader of the free world. And then, of course, there was Kid Rock, the man who had orchestrated this entire affair. Dana had always admired his rock and roll swagger, but there was something about seeing him in this context that made it all the more surreal. Kid Rock wasn't just a musician, he was a political player in his own right, influencing the course of events in a way that no one else in the room could. As the evening settled into its rhythm, Dana found himself engaged in a conversation with Bill Maher, the political satirist and late-night talk show host. The two had never really spoken much before, but in this environment, there was a certain camaraderie that came with sharing a space in the White House with people from such different walks of life. Maher was his usual self, sharp, witty, and unabashedly outspoken. "You know, Dana," Bill began, his tone playful but pointed, "I never thought I'd see the day when a UFC president and a reality TV star turned president would end up in the same room. Yet here we are." Dana chuckled, adjusting in his seat. "Yeah, man, it's pretty wild. But at the end of the day, we're all just people who like what we do. I respect Trump for his ability to, just do his own thing and stick to it. It's what made him a successful businessman, and it's what helped him become president." Bill raised an eyebrow. "You're giving him more credit than I would, but I get it. There's something about people who break the mold. But do you ever worry that people like him, or even someone like Kid Rock, might take things a little too far?" Dana thought about it for a moment before responding. "Maybe. But you know what? I think that's what makes America great, right? We can push the envelope and still have a place in the conversation. Look at UFC, it was a controversial sport, but now it's mainstream. We challenge the norms, and sometimes that means stepping into uncomfortable places." Bill nodded, clearly impressed by Dana's perspective. He leaned in a bit as though trying to find a deeper truth in Dana's words. "I like that," he said. "There's something refreshing about hearing someone say that. Not everyone wants to challenge the system. Some just want to fit in. But not you." It was true. Dana wasn't a man who cared much for fitting into societal boxes. His rise in the world of mixed martial arts had come from being bold, from making decisions that others saw as reckless or even foolish, but always trusting in his gut. He had made UFC a household name, and in many ways, he was just as rebellious as Trump, Kid Rock, or even Maher himself. The conversation shifted once again, and Dana found himself looking across the table at Donald Trump. The former president was engaged in another conversation with a group of guests, but he kept his eyes on Dana, occasionally nodding as if encouraging him to speak up. Dana knew Trump well enough to understand that the man liked to be the center of attention, but he also respected those who didn't seek the limelight for its own sake. "Donald, you're a man of big moves, no question about it," Dana remarked after a pause, deciding to take the opportunity to join the discussion. "But what's it like now? You've been at the top, you've been out, and now you're back in the fold. How do you keep pushing forward?" Trump gave him a knowing smile, as if the question was one he had been asked 1,000 times before. "Well, Dana, it's all about vision. When you're at the top, you can either let it slip away or you keep fighting for what you believe in. Look at UFC, it was nothing before you made it something. It's the same with politics. You fight for the people and you never back down." Dana nodded, impressed by Trump's confidence. There was a certain ease with which Trump spoke, a reassurance that came from knowing exactly who he was and what he wanted. It was something Dana admired, even if he didn't always agree with Trump's methods or his politics. Kid Rock, who had been listening in on the conversation, couldn't resist chiming in. "It's funny. Dana, you've built something from the ground up. Trump did the same thing. And hell, I've been trying to make music that says something that challenges the status quo. We're all kind of cut from the same cloth, aren't we?" Dana glanced over at Kid Rock, his face breaking into a grin. "I think you're right. We've all pushed against the grain in our own way. That's why this dinner works. It's not just about politics, it's about the people in this room who aren't afraid to speak their minds." The more Dana listened to the conversation around him, the more he realized how much the night had shifted his perspective. This wasn't just a dinner with the rich and famous, it was a gathering of people who had all carved out their own paths, no matter how unconventional. And now they were here, gathered in the White House, a symbol of power and influence, but also a place where they could all reflect on their journeys. At the other end of the table, Dana noticed Bill Maher laughing with a few others about a recent segment he had done on his show. Despite his well-known cynicism, Maher had a way of making even the most politically charged topics seem less intimidating. His humor, though biting, was a welcome break from the serious discussions about power and influence that often dominated the media. It reminded Dana that even in the most high-stakes environments, laughter and perspective were just as important as any policy or deal. As the dinner continued, the conversation ebbed and flowed, from politics to culture to sports, each person contributing their unique viewpoint. But what stood out most to Dana was the unexpected camaraderie that formed among people who, on paper, seemed to be on opposite sides of the spectrum. He had come to the dinner expecting a spectacle, but what he found was something far more complex. It wasn't just about Trump or Kid Rock or Bill Maher, it was about the people who dared to speak their truths, who challenged the system and created something real from their vision. And as the evening wound down, Dana couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. What had started as a casual dinner invitation from Kid Rock had turned into a defining moment, a reminder that no matter how different their paths had been, they were all connected by a shared spirit of defiance and independence. As the dinner continued late into the night, the energy in the room remained high. The food had been served, wine glasses were refilled, and the conversations seemed to grow more animated. Dana White, still processing everything around him, realized just how pivotal Kid Rock's influence had been in bringing this eclectic group of people together. Without Kid Rock, it was hard to imagine how a dinner like this, one that bridged the gap between music, politics, entertainment, and sports, could have even come to fruition. Kid Rock, ever the self-assured host, bounced between conversations with ease, his larger-than-life personality filling the room. He wasn't just the organizer of this dinner, he was the glue that held the evening together. Dana had known Kid Rock for years, but tonight he saw him in a new light. It wasn't just about music anymore, it was about a shared vision, a vision that united all of them in their rebellion against the norm. There was a moment in the evening when Kid Rock and Donald Trump shared a quiet conversation by the fireplace, away from the rest of the group. It was a rare moment of solitude in a night filled with socializing, and Dana couldn't help but notice the connection between them. Trump was always the center of attention, but when Kid Rock spoke, there was a level of respect and understanding that seemed to pass between them. It was clear that their bond went beyond just political support, it was a friendship built on mutual admiration. "I didn't expect to be at a White House dinner with Trump and Bill Maher tonight," Dana remarked to Kid Rock as they stood by the bar, watching the two men chat. Kid Rock laughed, a deep, gravelly sound. "Yeah, man, it's wild, isn't it? But that's what happens when you bring people together who aren't afraid to stir things up. Trump, Bill, me, we've all been outsiders in some way. And that's why this dinner works." Dana took a sip of his drink, reflecting on Kid Rock's words. "I get it now. This is bigger than just a political gathering. It's about people who've been willing to push boundaries and not back down. And in a way, that's what UFC's all about." "Exactly," Kid Rock said, his eyes gleaming with a mix of mischief and conviction. "You know, the media likes to paint us all as these crazy rebels, but the truth is, we're just people who do things our own way. We don't wait for permission. We make our own rules. And look where it's gotten us." Dana nodded, thinking about his own journey in the UFC. He had faced countless doubters and critics along the way, people who told him that mixed martial arts would never be mainstream, that it was too violent, too dangerous. But Dana had ignored the naysayers, pushing forward with a vision that would eventually make UFC one of the most successful sports organizations in the world. He realized that, in many ways, the people at this dinner had done the same. Whether it was Trump's unlikely rise to the presidency or Kid Rock's unapologetic approach to music, each one of them had defied expectations to carve out their own path. As the evening wore on, Dana couldn't help but notice the subtle alliances forming around him. Bill Maher, who had been known for his sharp critiques of Trump, was now deep in conversation with the former president. The two exchanged jabs and laughs, but there was a certain respect between them, a respect that Dana had seen grow over the course of the evening. It was clear that Bill, despite his outspoken criticism, had a soft spot for Trump's irreverence, just as Dana did. They were cut from the same cloth, both defiant in their own ways. And then there was the moment when Kid Rock turned to Dana, his face lit up with excitement. "Hey, I've been thinking about something," he said, his voice low. "We've got all these personalities here tonight. What if we do something bigger? Something that brings people from different worlds together, like UFC but on a larger scale. What if we create an event, a spectacle that combines politics, entertainment, and sports in a way no one's ever seen before?" Dana's ears perked up. "What are you thinking?" Kid Rock grinned. "A challenge. We bring together politicians, entertainers, and athletes for a show unlike anything anyone has ever seen. A massive crossover event. Maybe even something at the White House. We'll get people talking and we'll make it unforgettable." Dana let the idea marinate for a moment. He was no stranger to bold moves, and Kid Rock's suggestion sounded like something that could really shake things up. But there was something about the idea that resonated with Dana, something about the way it could blend entertainment with real-world issues in a way that felt honest, raw, and exhilarating. "You know, that might actually work," Dana said, considering the possibilities. "We could get everyone involved, UFC fighters, musicians, comedians, even politicians. It'd be a spectacle, but it'd also be something that matters. People don't just want to see a show, they want to see something real." Kid Rock's eyes gleamed. "Exactly. That's what makes it different. It's not just a gimmick. It's real, it's raw, and it'll challenge the way people think. Just like UFC did." Dana laughed, shaking his head. I don't know if I'm ready to bring that level of chaos to Washington, but it's definitely an idea worth thinking about. The night was winding down, but Dana couldn't shake the feeling that this dinner had been more than just a gathering of famous faces. It had been a collision of ideas, a moment where people from different corners of American culture had come together to discuss the future of their industries and their country. And the most surprising part of it all, the fact that a dinner, organized by Kid Rock, could bring together such a diverse group of individuals with one common goal: to push boundaries and challenge the status quo. As Dana stood up to leave, he found himself thinking about the strange alliances that had formed over the course of the evening. Trump and Maher, Kid Rock and Dana White. These were people who had nothing in common on the surface, but tonight, they had all shared a rare moment of connection. It was a reminder that, in America, anything was possible. You didn't have to be part of the political elite or the entertainment industry's power players to make a difference. Sometimes, all it took was a few bold ideas and the courage to act on them. The next day, after a night of unforgettable conversations and connections, Dana White found himself waking up to a world that felt a little different. It wasn't just because of the lavish dinner or the heady mix of personalities, it was the way the event had forced him to look at things from a broader perspective. Kid Rock's idea of bringing together people from various spheres of influence for a one-of-a-kind event had ignited something in him. It was the spark of possibility that had been missing from his routine for a long time. As he sat in his hotel room sipping coffee and reflecting on the dinner, Dana began to think about how the night had unfolded. It had started as a casual invitation from Kid Rock, someone Dana had known for years. But what had followed was nothing short of revolutionary, a blend of politics, entertainment, sports, and culture that felt like a breath of fresh air. Dana's phone buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. It was a text message from Bill Maher. "Good morning, Dana. Last night was wild. You and Kid Rock might be onto something. Let's talk more about that event you were kicking around. I've got some ideas too. Let's set up a time to chat." Dana couldn't help but smile. Bill Maher, with all his sarcasm and wit, had a way of turning every conversation into something both enlightening and entertaining. Maher's interest in Kid Rock's idea confirmed what Dana had been thinking: there was real potential in this concept. If Bill Maher, a man who had made a career out of tearing down political figures and the status quo, was excited about the idea, it meant that something was truly brewing. But there was still more to consider. The dinner had brought out a lot of emotions in everyone, and Dana was eager to see how it would play out in the coming weeks. Could a spectacle like the one Kid Rock envisioned really work? Could they pull it off without it seeming like a farce or a publicity stunt? And more importantly, what would the public think? Dana knew better than most that public opinion could be a fickle thing, especially when it came to figures like Trump, Maher, and Kid Rock, each of whom had their own distinct followings and detractors. As the day progressed, Dana began fielding calls from other people who had attended the dinner. Many were still buzzing about the evening, with some already discussing the possibility of making the event a reality. UFC was, after all, no stranger to creating spectacle. Dana had built his empire on the idea of turning mixed martial arts into a mainstream product, and he knew how to generate excitement. But this idea, combining sports, politics, and entertainment, was on an entirely different level. That afternoon, Dana sat down with Kid Rock and Bill Maher, the three of them hashing out the finer details of the idea they had discussed the previous evening. Kid Rock was eager to move forward, talking excitedly about a potential partnership with other major figures in the entertainment world. He envisioned a live broadcast event that would draw millions of viewers and spark debates across the country. He wasn't interested in doing something ordinary. It had to be bold, provocative, and unlike anything anyone had ever seen. "Picture this," Kid Rock said, leaning forward. "We take the White House out of the political spectrum for a second. We bring in people from all walks of life. Celebrities, politicians, activists, fighters, musicians. We create an event that's part political discussion, part entertainment, and part competition. We have debates, performances, and even a UFC fight or two. The whole thing is a spectacle. The idea is to get people to think, to engage, to take a step back and question the narrative." Dana could see where Kid Rock was coming from. This was about more than just an event. It was about creating a cultural moment that would make people think and talk. He could feel the excitement building in the room as they fleshed out the details. "We could even have Bill here to moderate some of the debates," Dana suggested. "He's perfect for that. He's sharp, and he doesn't take crap from anyone." That would bring some real authenticity to the whole thing. Bill Maher grinned. I like the idea. It's dangerous, but that's what makes it fun. We can make it political, but we don't have to go the usual route. We get to have fun with it. We make it something people will want to watch, and we force them to pay attention. It was a risk, Dana knew. It was risky in the way that UFC had once been. People had doubted the sport's ability to succeed, and yet, he had turned it into a billion-dollar empire. The same could happen here, but only if they played it right. It was a balancing act. Too much spectacle and they risked alienating audiences. Too little and it could fall flat. We'll have to keep it authentic, Dana said, nodding as he thought through the logistics. It can't feel staged. We need to be real with the audience. And the participants need to be open to pushing their own boundaries like we did last night. If they're not willing to take risks, then it's not going to work. Bill and Kid Rock both agreed. It was clear that they were all in, and their energy was contagious. What started as a dinner conversation was now taking shape as something bigger. An event that could blend political commentary, entertainment, and sports into one explosive night. But Dana also knew that this idea wouldn't be easy to pull off. They were entering uncharted territory. For the next few weeks, the trio worked tirelessly, meeting with various key figures in the entertainment, political, and sports industries. They sought out people who were willing to take a stand, who weren't afraid to disrupt the norm and engage in conversations that could be uncomfortable. They needed people who weren't just famous but who had something to say. One of the key challenges they faced was ensuring that the event didn't become a partisan spectacle. The last thing they wanted was for it to turn into a politically charged event that alienated half of the country. Instead, they wanted to create something that brought people together, something that made them question everything they thought they knew about politics, culture, and entertainment. But as the planning continued, Dana couldn't shake the feeling that they were onto something massive. The dinner had sparked an idea, and now it was beginning to take form, and it was starting to feel like it could be one of the most talked about events in modern history. As the date for the event loomed closer, the excitement and anticipation began to build to a fever pitch. Dana White, Kid Rock, and Bill Maher had spent weeks putting together the logistics, securing guest speakers, athletes, and celebrities, and fine-tuning the format of what would soon be known as the Crossroads event, an unprecedented combination of politics, entertainment, and sports all rolled into one. The event would be held at a specially constructed venue on the White House lawn, a place where the symbolic power of politics would meet the raw energy of pop culture and sport. The venue itself would be designed to evoke the feeling of a battleground, not just in terms of physical space, but in terms of ideas. There would be debates, performances, impromptu discussions, and, of course, a UFC fight to top it all off. The evening was designed to be an interactive experience, engaging viewers and encouraging them to participate in the discussions as well. But even as Dana thought about the specifics of the event, there was a lingering question: could they really pull it off? We're about to do something that's never been done before, Dana said to Kid Rock one afternoon as they finalized the guest list. This isn't just about entertaining people. This is about changing the conversation. People are going to expect us to give them something real. If we fail, it's not just a bad event, it's a message to the world that it can't be done. Kid Rock nodded, looking pensive for a moment. We've been here before, man. Think about UFC. We came out of nowhere and shook up the entire sports world. This is the same thing, but on a different scale. We're making a statement that people can't ignore. Dana couldn't argue with that logic. He had seen how the UFC had changed the game in terms of sports entertainment, and he knew that this event had the potential to do the same for the broader cultural landscape. If they succeeded, it wouldn't just be a political event or a celebrity spectacle, it would be a defining moment in the history of American entertainment and public discourse. One of the key features of the event was that it would be streamed live on multiple platforms. They weren't just catering to a specific political or cultural audience, they wanted to reach as many people as possible. The idea was to push boundaries and reach people who might not have otherwise engaged in political debates or been interested in the intersection of entertainment and sports. As the day of the event arrived, Dana felt a mix of nerves and excitement. He had worked on major events before, but nothing quite like this. The pressure was on, but he also knew that the idea behind it was bigger than any one person. It was about creating a space where real conversations could happen without fear of judgment or censorship, a space where people from all walks of life could come together and challenge the status quo. When the night of the event finally arrived, the White House lawn was transformed into a grand, open-air theater. A massive stage stood at the center, surrounded by seats for the audience, and large screens flanked the sides for viewers watching from afar. The atmosphere was electric, charged with anticipation. It felt like the start of something historic. The opening act was a musical performance by Kid Rock himself, who took the stage with a powerful anthem about defiance and freedom. The crowd cheered, and Dana couldn't help but smile as he watched the energy in the room grow. This was the kind of spectacle they had been aiming for. It wasn't just about politics, it was about entertainment, passion, and unapologetic expression. Next up was the first debate, an intense, high-stakes conversation between political figures from both sides of the aisle. They were joined by Bill Maher, who moderated the discussion with his signature wit and sharp tongue. The debates were lively, often veering into uncharted territory as the participants pushed each other to defend their positions in ways that weren't just political but deeply personal. Dana sat backstage watching as the event unfolded. He could feel the energy of the crowd, and he knew that they were witnessing something groundbreaking. The event wasn't just about the topics being discussed, it was about how it was being discussed. It was about the freedom to disagree, to challenge, to entertain, and to create. And for the first time in a long time, Dana felt like everything he had been working toward in his career was leading to this moment. "I can't believe this is really happening," Bill Maher said to Dana, standing next to him as they watched the debates unfold. "This isn't just a show. This is history in the making." Dana nodded. "It's more than just a show. It's a chance to bring people together who wouldn't normally share the same room. We're pushing boundaries, and that's what matters." After the debates, the highlight of the evening was the live UFC fight. Dana White's world collided with Kid Rock's music and Bill Maher's political acumen as a group of UFC fighters entered the ring, ready to take the fight to the mat. The crowd went wild, and the event reached new heights of energy as the fighters performed their most dramatic moves under the spotlight. The UFC fight was symbolic in many ways. It wasn't just about sports, it was about the raw power of competition and the human spirit. The audience watched, entranced by the skill and strategy of the fighters, but it was more than that. It was a reminder that in America, everything was up for grabs. Whether it was politics, music, or sports, people had the power to define their own narratives. As the night drew to a close, Dana, Kid Rock, and Bill Maher stood together at the center of the stage, taking in the sights and sounds of the event. They had done it. They had pulled off an unforgettable night that would go down in history as one of the most innovative and controversial events ever staged. "The world is watching," Dana said, his voice filled with a mixture of pride and awe. "And I think we've just changed the game." Kid Rock slapped him on the back. "Hell yeah. We've got people thinking. That's all we need." Bill Maher smirked. "You know, this is the kind of chaos I can get behind. It's not just politics or entertainment, it's a revolution. And we just launched it." The crowd roared, the applause echoing throughout the night. It was a standing ovation, not just for the spectacle they had just witnessed, but for the idea that had brought them all together. In the end, the Crossroads event wasn't just a dinner, a debate, or a fight. It was a moment when everything collided, a moment that would echo throughout American culture for years to come. And as Dana White looked around at the smiling faces of the people who had made it happen, he knew one thing for sure: they had just broken every rule in the book. And that, he thought with a grin, was exactly how it was supposed to be.